31st of December 2019, a journal entry. I know you want to know the answer to everything. Your path, your purpose, what your passion is supposed to be. But you do not find the answer by standing still and looking. You find the answer as you go along, as you try things and experience life. You live your way to the answer. Trust that. It's time to start doing. This is a video about the year 2020. The year I decided to commit fully. The year I actually recovered. This is a year I went all in. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you for popping in. My name is Georgina. I'm a yoga teacher, a fitness coach and a writer from the UK. And this video is about the year 2020, but maybe not quite as you would expect. I think 2020 came with a lot of challenges, to say the least, for all of us. Like, we couldn't see our family and our friends. We spent a lot of time alone in our houses, just to name a few things. But I also think it forced many of us to face ourselves, or the things that we'd been running away from. At least it definitely did for me. And so this video is about my 2020, the year that I fully recovered from an eating disorder by going all in. I began the year 2020 feeling very, very hopeless. I was extremely burnt out. I was teaching over 20 hours of yoga a week, going to the gym every day, walking everywhere. I was hugely coping. I felt disconnected from the world, from myself, and I was coping with all the usual things that you experience when you're trying to keep yourself smaller than maybe you're supposed to be. I was cold, I was hungry all the time, very moody, really down. And because of that, my relationships were suffering, my work was suffering, my happiness was suffering. I was feeling very lost. But I never really thought that I would be able to move away from that. I think that if you're in the cycle of chronic dieting, it can be really difficult to see a way out. I would often say that I didn't understand how people kind of made it through that hard part, that really painful part, as your body begins to change or you start to lose the identity that you've cultivated for yourself. Every now and then I would kind of dip a toe into what recovery might look like. But then I would get to that hard part, my body would begin to change, and immediately I would pull back and go back to my old ways, because it always felt like my suspicions or my fears were confirmed and that it was indeed so painful. However, at the start of 2020, I had come to realise that at 27, I'd already wasted so much time and I just didn't want to be trudging around the same circle for the rest of my life. At this point, Stephanie Buttermore had hugely popularised the idea of all in. Now, I'm sure many of you will know who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about, but just in case, I am going to tag everything of hers below, and I'm also just going to give a very quick recap about what that means. All in is the idea that you go fully in on your recovery. You commit to it completely. So that means you always eat to satiety, no matter how much that means, no matter what that does to your body, how you change, and whether or not you gain weight. It's choosing health over the aesthetic. And I'd actually, as I kind of alluded to earlier, tried this before. In the eating disorder world, there is a similar idea called the mini-mode theory. The mini-mode theory is where you eat a minimum of 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day with minimal amounts of exercise, so that you're really kind of really going all in on the idea of healing your body and the damage that you have done through chronic dieting or restriction. And there is no sort of prerequisites for this. You can be a healthy weight and still cause damage by chronic dieting. Often what happens, and what happened in Stephanie Buttermore's case, is you go past what might be considered your set point weight as you heal your body, and then you'll reach a point where your hunger levels have normalized, body begins to work more efficiently, and so your weight begins to come down. That's not a definite, but it's often what happens. Either way, the idea is that you end in a place where you have energy again, you're excited about life again, you have a libido, you're not cold all the time, you have normal hunger cues, you're not food obsessed. It's choosing the rest of your life over your body goals. At the start of 2020, I felt like I wasn't ready for that. I knew myself well enough to know that all in was going to have to look a little bit different for me. I still wanted to commit fully, but I wanted to do things a little bit more slowly. Now in bodybuilding, there is a term called reverse dieting, and that's almost like a slower recovery diet. And I wanted to take the science from that and apply it to myself. So in bodybuilding, you get down to really low levels of body fat in order to kind of show off the musculature that you have created and built as you compete. But that is not healthy nor sustainable, and so the way that bodybuilders make their way sort of out of that and regain their health is by slowly increasing their calories. And I felt like maybe I could do something similar. And that's what the start of 2020 looked like for me. That was the first few months. I slowly increased my calories, and I did feel better. I felt stronger, I felt more energized, but I also knew that there was this small part of me that was still just kind of dipping the toe in. Sometimes people would describe recovery as peeling off a band-aid, and you can either rip it off or you can peel it off slowly. And I had peeled it off, but eventually I think you have to do that last little pull, that last little tug. And I knew I wasn't doing that yet. I just wanted to read something to you quickly that I think kind of encompasses this quite nicely, this part of my year, my life. I wrote it on my portable journal, the notes on my phone. The hardest part of recovery remains choosing to let go of a life and identity where the future feels obvious but small, in place for one that is seemingly uncontrollable. The world you have in your head versus the one out there. And yet, it is life you know you're missing out on. It was time to go all in. And so in April 2020, I reached out to a nutritionist to ask for a little bit more help and guidance. I have to be honest, I was doing that thing that so many of us do when we're going through recovery, where we reach out for help and yet we kind of want our problems to go away without actually changing anything. Or I'll do that as long as I won't gain weight. I was kind of in that position. But at the same time, I realized that like tomorrow always feels easier. And I was so done with treading around the same circle. It had been like 14 years by this point. And that meant I was gonna have to do some things that scared me. And so on a practical level, I stopped calorie counting. Before, I'd used it as a way to kind of track my minimums, but it also meant that I was still kind of keeping tabs on things, and I wasn't allowing myself to fully go to satiety when I was using numbers as a gauge of like my hunger. I was forced to rest because at the same time we went into lockdown, and I gained weight, and I gained some more weight, and then I gained some more weight. The months of May to July sucked so hard. My clothes didn't fit me. Even the clothes I would have considered my bigger clothes didn't fit me. I bought new clothes and then they didn't fit me. And I think we had this idea of like blooming as we recover, and it felt like anything but blooming. It was uncomfortable and it felt messy, and I felt so full of self-hate. The sensible part of my brain knew that this was not self-hate. This was the kindest thing that I've ever done. The kindest, most compassionate thing I'd ever done for myself was allowing myself to go through this even when I felt worthless. I didn't gain as much weight as Stephanie Buttermore did in her journey, but then my extreme hunger wasn't the same amount as hers. I never got down to as extreme levels of leanness as she did. And I also want to drive home just how individual this process is. Just because one thing happened to someone doesn't mean it'll happen to you. I think that's one of the most important things. There are a lot of times when I really, really wanted to give up, but there are a few things that kept me going. The first thing was the realization that I was not hungry all the time anymore, and that food was no longer on the pedestal that it had once been on. When you allow yourself to eat, the sort of like dopamine hit that food gives you really, really decreases. And not only that, it becomes this more kind of just casual thing. And that was definitely happening to me. And it was extremely motivating and reassuring that I was on the right path. The other thing is discipline. This is huge. You know, the thing that keeps you dieting and under eating even when it feels hard? That is proof that you have this within you. That is proof that you have discipline. You just have to kind of spin it on its head and use it for something else. There's actually a line in Harry Potter where Dumbledore says to Harry, it's our choices that define us, Harry. This is the same. Recovery wasn't this kind of like enlightened state that I imagined it might be. Instead, it was these constant choices and decisions and steps that just added up over time. And in that way, you kind of walk into recovery. It's not this big final destination. It's just something you stumble into. It becomes like a constant way of being and living versus this kind of end goal. The other thing is self-care. This is hard. It's really, really hard. And it's so important to be gentle with yourself. I truly believe that we love the things that we care for. And so I don't mean that you have to be going off and doing bubble baths and face masks. I literally mean taking the time to do your hair or wear something that makes you feel nice. And finally, a mantra. The only way is through. Come August, I was definitely starting to experience a drop in the puffiness that the last few months had brought with them. I felt like I had a few low days here and there, and they were sometimes quite confronting, but slowly I was getting used to this different body, this bigger body, this new me, and I was finding that weight and food were holding less importance, to the point that I almost didn't even recognize myself. I went away to see a friend. We had a barbecue in her back garden, and past Georgina would have only really been focusing on the food that we would be having and really zoned out of everything else that was going on. But I was this unrecognizable me where the food was just kind of something that was happening, and what was important was my friends and being present with them. And it felt so unbelievably life-changing, something that I would never have believed was possible. And it was. In September, I realized just how big of a hurdle I had gone over when I received a email from a popular company advertising a 90-day detox. And in the past, that would have been either very triggering, or I would have wanted to have done the detox to kind of finally be the time that I would love myself. And I felt the pull, like I felt the trigger, I felt the pull in, like, oh, maybe. But instead of diving into that, instead of jumping into that, put my phone down, and I was like, it's not for me. That's not the path I choose anymore. Blinkers on. That's not my path. You can feel triggers, you can feel the pull, but that is not the relapse. The relapse is the choice that you made. Go back to your choices. Go back to your power. At the end of October, I bought a new pair of jeans. And it felt like a really big deal, which potentially sounds really silly, but it felt like proof that I'd made it. And because I know that doesn't make sense, I want to finish by reading you a little something that I wrote. I don't remember when it happened exactly. Maybe sometime around 12 years old. I stopped wearing skirts over my jeans because I was worried about being made fun of at school. And then a couple of years later, JoJo brought out a new music video. She was wearing skinny jeans, and immediately I wanted some. So I went to the shop and got some secondhand diesels. I was in love. They were dark blue denim with gold stitching around the pockets. And then someone told me they made my legs look big, and a year later they didn't fit me. They fell down even with a belt on. At 20, I threw a pair of jeans on the fire. It was supposed to be a symbol of change and of moving on. I was never meant for size 00. I'd caused a lot of damage, not just to myself, to get into them. I was saying not this anymore. Over the years that followed, I ebbed and flowed with the success of my recovery, as many of us do. And after a while, I stopped wearing jeans altogether, swapping them for yoga leggings so I didn't have to grow in and out of them anymore. Maybe it sounds silly, but it hurt too much. And then at the start of this year, I felt that pain full force when my big jeans, the jeans that were always too large, wouldn't even do it. I would never have bought another pair if it weren't for that we were going away with my family, and there was no way that my mum would let me get away with wearing leggings for a week. I bought an ugly pair, a pair that was so big that they almost fell down, but at least they would fit. It felt like a safer choice. But here is what I have learnt as I continue to grow in more ways than one. We love the things that we care for, and self-care does not look like hiding yourself. Maybe at first as you build some strength, but eventually is saying, this is me. So I bought some jeans, a pair that fit, and some of you said on Instagram that you didn't like them, but I did, so I kept them. Finally, brave, content, and strong enough to stand in some sense of self-confidence and assurance. And I wish I could say to that 12-year-old girl, you are great. No one cares as long as you are happy, and if they do, it's them, not you. You do not have to shrink yourself. Wear the jeans. If you stayed to the end of the video, thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely day. Please like, comment, subscribe, say hi, and I'll see you soon.